Good evening again, everyone, and welcome to this Applied Linguistics and Tesol seminar, outlining some of the courses we have in this area at Macquarie University. And also, more importantly, we'll be joined by some panelists tonight who will be able to tell you a lot about the kinds of career opportunities that are available in this particular area. Peter Roger is my name. I'm the Director of Applied Linguistics and Tesol at Macquarie University. And I'm joined tonight as well by Agnes Bodis, who is the convener of the Graduate Certificate of Tesol, and she'll be talking about that in a few minutes. Just before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Macquarie University is located, the Watamatagal clan of the Darug Nation, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land since the Dreamtime. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that any of you are located on in different parts of Sydney and indeed Australia. Just to let everybody know, this session's being recorded. If you've got a question for any of our presenters, use the Q&A function on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can pop your question in there. All of the questions will be moderated and we'll either respond by typing a response online or respond live orally. And we can assign the question to the person on the team who's best able to answer it. Many people wonder, what is applied linguistics? Basically, applied linguistics refers to the application of language studies to understand and offer solutions to real-life problems. And so on the left of the screen there, you can see a big piece of machinery. And that piece of machinery is actually used to dig tunnels underneath different parts of Sydney. And one of the people in that picture is actually an applied linguist. And she is in charge of community liaison, managing the relationships between the companies and the government involved in the infrastructure project and the residents who are affected by the building. So you might think that's a very unusual job for a linguist, but you can find linguists anywhere. And this is what makes it a particularly exciting field. But a more traditional place where you'd find applied linguists is in a language classroom. And probably many of you tonight are interested in English language teaching. I'm going to start off by talking about the Master of Applied Linguistics in Tesol degree that Macquarie University offers. We're very proud of this degree. It emerged in the late 1980s, and I believe it was one of the first fully distance mode Master of Applied Linguistics degrees anywhere in the world. It's evolved into a degree that's now offered on campus or entirely online. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it. Basically, the Master of Applied Linguistics and Tesol degree is open to anybody who has completed a bachelor's degree and has an interest in language and its uses in human communication. The degree is, the full length of the degree is 2 years, but many people complete it in 1.5 years, or even in some cases in 1 year, depending on their previous qualifications and experience. It's a suitable course for people who are aspiring language teachers seeking to enter the language teaching profession, which we abbreviate as TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages. It's also suitable, however, for experienced language teachers who are seeking to enhance their qualifications and take their career to another level. And some people also do the course when, even if they don't have the intention of being a language teacher or continuing in that field, but are interested in language and communication in many spheres of life in society. If you study the Master of Applied Linguistics and Tesol with us, you'll study a number of different course units, but perhaps a more interesting way to think about it is some of the big questions that we'll tackle throughout the course. We'll talk, for example, about how languages are learned. What should a modern language classroom look like? Do we even need language classrooms? We'll think about big questions like, how can I keep learners to stay motivated if I'm a language teacher? Or if I'm a language learner, how can I stay motivated myself? We'll also look at things like what language has to do with social justice, because it has a lot to do with social justice. And then some parts of the course go inside the brain to understand what a bilingual brain can do, because of course, when people are learning additional languages, they are becoming multilingual. And it's very interesting to look at that from so many different perspectives. There are many degrees in applied linguistics and Tesol at the master's level in Australia and indeed around the world. You might be wondering what makes Macquarie's programs unique. There are a few things. One is their flexible delivery. Students can complete their qualification part-time or full-time, on campus or online, or a mixture of both. For international students, there are some restrictions on the ability to study part-time, particularly if one is on a student visa in Australia. For domestic students, part-time study is completely available, and many of our students do study part-time, so they can share studies with other commitments to do with family or career. The degree can also be studied entirely on campus or entirely online or both. Importantly, people who choose to study online sometimes live in other parts of the world and may never set foot on the Macquarie University campus, but there's no on-campus requirement. It's an internationally relevant degree. We have over 1,000 graduates and current students who come from over 30 countries around the world. And we also have staff who have experienced living, teaching, and researching in many parts of the world. Our degree is part of the Macquarie University Department of Linguistics, which is ranked number 27 internationally in linguistics subject rankings. We've also been ranked in the top 10 applied linguistics and Tesol master's programs internationally. And our research record is something that we're very proud of as well. So if you're interested in a master's degree in this field, we'd love to have you join us. I'll now pass over to Aggie Bodis, my colleague, who will tell you a little bit about the Graduate Certificate of Tesol.
Thank you, Peter. Well, welcome from me too. My name is Aggie Bodis, and I convene the Graduate Certificate of Tesol course, which forms also the units that it comprises form part of the master's course as well. It's embedded in the master's course as well. So you have the option to study a Graduate Certificate of Tesol course, but if you choose that you really want to study some more, this is a pathway to a master's course as well. So I'm going to start by looking at what the qualification is good for. Where can you teach with a Tesol qualification? Now, as you can see, there are opportunities both in Australia and internationally as well. You can teach in the primary and high school sector in Australia if you're a qualified teacher. You can then become an EALT specialist teacher. You can also teach adults, migrants and refugees in the AMEPF program, for example. That's the Adult Migrant English program. And these students are eligible for English language support, and these support is allocated. Actually, the allocated hours for this support has just been uncapped, but Sophie can, one of our panelists can talk to you about this. You can also teach in the ELICOS sector, which stands for English Language Intensive Courses for Overseas Students. This sector, well, this typically includes university language centers or private colleges or English language colleges. At the moment, this sector is in a bit of a hibernation until the borders reopen, but there are many possibilities in this sector once it's revived, so to speak. And many of us who are present here today have worked in this sector, and there's many possibilities there for you. Internationally, you have the option of teaching in schools, universities, private institutions. When it comes to international companies, you might be placed to teach certain job families, like teaching accountants. There's also a need. This is basically because many international companies have English as their main language for communication. And so at these workplaces, you need to train the employees. And also there's this emerging area of online teaching. The panelists that we have invited today have an experience in covering many of these fields, so they can talk to you about this. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I'll talk to you a bit about the course structure. As you can see, the course basically consists of 4 units, which comprises 40 credit points. It can be studied face-to-face or distance, as Peter has mentioned already. If you study face-to-face, you become part of class, you're on campus, and actually it's held in our new state-of-the-art central courtyard building, which has videos as well. So if you're a distance student, you can see the classes from there too. But if you're a distance student, you have access to the same materials, short recordings of the lectures, the same tasks as a face-to-face student would have. You have an option to study it full-time or part-time. I'd like to talk to you about employability. The units have a heavy employability focus to make sure that you have the best skills for your future careers. And this is why it's important that all the teaching staff have long years of ESL experience. We're also active in Tesol research and really passionate about the field. In fact, we've just been awarded the Faculty Learning Innovation Award for our work in the very first green unit you can see there, Apple 6000's language teaching methodologies. We changed the unit so that it's more accessible and uses innovative methods of teaching. So in the curriculum, we make sure that we address these employability skills and provide tasks and information on what is needed for an ESL teacher. And for that, I've done a lot of consultation with main stakeholders from all these sectors that you can see on the right-hand side: primary school, the migrants sector, ALICOS sector, and EFL teachers as well. Yes, next slide, please. So why become an ESL or an EFL teacher? Basically, it's a very rewarding, and I'm sure that our panelists will agree as well, it's a rewarding experience to support migrants in Australia. You actually make a big difference in someone else's life, and that person affects you as well. And this is how you need to approach teaching. What can I learn from these students as well? You can also, if you go overseas, you can live in and experience a different culture. You can learn a new language. You can grow through these interactions with our diverse students. And you can also, teaching itself can also be a career path with many possibilities, like in assessment, language assessment, materials design, school management. So there's a management pathway as well. Now, this is what I wanted to cover, and I think we can move on to talking to our panelists who can share their experiences, or maybe I wanted to explain this first. Of course, if you come from the primary and high school sector, there is funding opportunity available for you in New South Wales, and you can find more information through this, which is going to be shared in the Q&A or the chat with you. The Teach and Learn scholarships cover many different areas, but ELD teaching is one part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aggie. That's a great summary of the graduate certificate of Tesol and some of the career opportunities that follow it. I'd like to now move on to introduce tonight's panel for the discussion. We have three panelists with us tonight. Unfortunately, Janet Freeman, who's listed first on the slide, was unable to join us tonight, but we have with us tonight Sophie Dyson, who's the head English ESOL teacher at TAFE in Hornsby. Bonnie James, who's a former graduate of our graduate certificate of Tesol, or I should say a graduate of our grad cert, and a current teacher with the Newcastle TAFE. And we also have Luke Thompson, who's a graduate of our Master of Applied Linguistics and Tesol program, and currently works in the Department of Linguistics with us. Each of them bring a wealth of different experience, and we'd like to send some questions to them and get them to answer them. I'll also be keeping track of your questions coming through on the Q&A, so stick around till after we've finished our little panel discussion, because we'll have plenty of time to address your questions, so keep them coming. I'll hand over to Aggie now to carry on with the discussion there.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to invite our panelists now to introduce themselves and explain their relationships to Macquarie University. So I'm going to start with Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bonnie. Thank you for having me. I graduated from the graduate certificate of Tesol this year and started working as an ESOL teacher at TAFE. So I teach English to migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Prior to this, I worked as an English foreign language teacher online. Most of my students were based in China, and some of the companies I worked for were Dada and Say ABC.
Thank you, Bonnie. Luke?
Hi, everyone. My name's Luke Thompson. I started my English language teaching career in Japan, where I taught for over 4 years. When I returned to Australia, I enrolled in the Master of Applied Linguistics and Tesol course, and after graduating, I started teaching in Ellicos at the English Language Centre at Macquarie University, which is also where I did my teaching practicum during my studies at Macquarie. I've also been teaching in the linguistics department for the last 4 years on undergraduate units, and recently started teaching on the Applied Linguistic and Tesol program. I've also worked with academics from public health and the business school at Macquarie to provide academic language and literacy support to postgraduate students.
Thank you, Luke. Sophie? You're mute.
Who's very good at technology. Hang on. Right, is that better? So I'm Sophie Dyson, head teacher of ESOL at TAFE Hornsby campus. So I've been working at TAFE for 20 years. The last 6 I've been head teacher. And before that, I started my career a bit like Luke, teaching overseas, teaching in France, in fact. And that was for 6 years, quite a long time ago. And when I returned to Australia, I started it as a part-time casual teacher at TAFE. And I've became a full-time teacher, and now a head teacher.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with postgraduate student experience, questions about your experience, Bonnie and Luke. Could you please tell us about yourselves also, how you arrived at your present career, and tell us about the course that you studied.
Who would like to go first?
You can go first, Bonnie.
Bonnie.
Okay, sure. So well, actually, I have a legal background, but I wasn't satisfied with that career. So I went straight to TAFE on the Central Coast, so Gosford TAFE, and volunteered in the English language classrooms there, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And from then on, I knew I wanted to teach English. I was eager to start working though as well. So I got an opportunity to do some online teaching for some Chinese companies. So I did that whilst completing the graduate certificate of Tesol, which has now led me to my job at TAFE. Yeah.
Thank you. What did you like about your course?
Ooh, many things. So I studied the course online, which might seem daunting at first to study a university course online, but actually the professors, actually Aggie was one of my lecturers, they were very contactable, and the resources were all easily accessible. Probably the thing I enjoyed most were the Zoom sessions. They were very interactive. You could ask the lecturers questions face-to-face, well, sort of face-to-face, virtually speaking on Zoom. We did group work. It was just very engaging, and I found it a much more enriched learning experience compared to traditional lectures.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Luke?
Well, I guess my interest in language teaching sort of coincided with when I was a language learner overseas. I originally went over to Japan to sort of hoping to do a bonsai apprenticeship, and that dream sort of slowly evaporated, and I found myself in English language teaching and fell in love with it. Not only because I was a student of language, but probably because as I was teaching, it was informing what I was learning. In terms of the course, I found that it really helped me not only to understand the issues related to language teaching, but it also encouraged me to think about those issues critically. This is particularly useful, I think, in the language teaching industry, because it puts you in a position where you have the tools to reflect on your own practice and also the curriculum you're working with and even the institution that you're working in. So I found that quite soon after graduating the program, I felt confident enough to suggest and implement changes to the curriculum that I was working with, and also to make some suggestions even to senior management about my ideas. I think that having a strong background in theory and even just knowing the right terminology to use, it can really help when you're justifying your ideas and negotiating any sort of change that you feel might be beneficial.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Let's turn to Sophie now. Could you please talk about the adult ESL teaching sector you're in and the current employment opportunities there?
Yeah, sure. So we've actually, over the past few semesters, tried to take as many prac students as we can from the grad cert program. So that's my link I forgot to mention with Macquarie Uni. So the current state of the ESOL industry, well, at TAFE, we have two streams of ESOL courses. We have the AMEP, the Adult Migrant English program, which Aggie mentioned, which is federally funded. And at the moment we have approximately 500 students. We also have another stream, which is our Smart and Skilled New South Wales government funded courses, and we have approximately 200 students. So both streams contain almost all fee-free courses for citizens and PRs who need to improve their English. And although there are different legislative and contractual requirements, there are quite a lot of students and classes and thus a need for teachers. Now, Aggie mentioned this before, in April, there were changes to the AMEP legislation, meaning that more students who have already done their AMEP can actually, and are now out in the community, can actually come back and resume their study. There's no more caps, so to speak, on the number of hours, nor the amount of time that they have to study within. So this has made our numbers explode, which is fantastic. So despite no new migrants really arriving due to COVID, we're being inundated with students, and thus we need lots of teachers.
Lots of work opportunities, right?
Yeah, lots of work opportunities. So yeah, we have 30, 40 classes running. So for about 700 students, we have courses from complete beginner up until academic English. And prac students do come and teach on all of our courses. So yeah, there's a lot of demand for work a lot of demand at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, both Bonnie and Luke were employed at the place where they conducted their practicum, right?
That's correct.
And how did you find that?
I loved my practicum at TAFE. I had a great mentor teacher. She was super supportive, and she allowed me to explore different teaching methodologies, which was great. And yeah, I feel really, it's my second home. So.
Did you have to do anything, any extra studies to be employed at TAFE?
The graduate certificate of Tesol was what I did, yeah, to get that stepping stone into TAFE.
Is there any other requirement maybe? There's no certificate for?
Oh yes, shall I answer that, or sorry?
Yes, please, Sophie.
Yeah. So to work at TAFE in Tesol, you need a grad cert or dip in Tesol, but you also need something called the Certificate for in Training and Assessment, and the code for the latest iterations of this course is 40116. So it's the Cert 4 TAE 40116. Now this is delivered at TAFE or through various private training organisations, but you must have this, even if you have a doctorate in Tesol, you must have this course to work at TAFE. Yeah.
Yes, probably we all have that, right?
Yes.
I did mine while I was working at TAFE, actually.
Yeah, I did mine online. It took me 4 weeks to do the Cert 4. So
that's good.
Yeah, I think that's quite fast for these days anyway.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to ask you about opportunities teaching overseas. Both Luke and Bonnie and Sophie had experience teaching overseas, myself included. In different ways though. So many students, even our present students are taking part in or planning to take part in a program called JET, which is an exchange program between Japan and other nations. And the participants are involved in teaching positions, teaching roles in Japan. Luke, you've taken part in this program, haven't you?
Yeah, the JET program is quite unique in that it really has a lot of dependent contextual factors. I mean, it depends on whichever school you go to will have a completely different understanding of what your role should be. And so to have a really good understanding of how to adapt to situations and how to be flexible and work with others and to sort of work in a way that lets people know that you know what you're doing is really, really important on that program, because it's very easy to become marginalised if you're not able to sort of show what you're able to do.
All right, thank you. Bonnie, could you tell us about your work experience teaching students in China online?
Yeah, so I did that alongside studying the graduate certificate of Tesol. I taught students one-on-one, I taught small groups of students, I taught whole classrooms where I actually got to work with the class teacher as well as the students. What I found probably most interesting was the level of rapport that I was able to build with these students. It's the same as teaching face-to-face in terms of rapport, which amazed me. I still have contact with some of these students, but I've never met them face to face. So yeah, that's good. And also gaining the skills to teach online, was very important, and even more so now since COVID-19. So even though I'm not teaching online at the moment, it's a comfort to know that if I'm ever forced to, or I want to go back to teaching online, I can do that. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is what I planned to include in the panel session. I think we can move on to the Q&A now and answering questions of the participants.
Great. Thanks, thanks, Aggie, and thanks to all the panelists. Keep your questions coming. A few of the questions I've typed answers on online just where they were easy to answer, but a number of them I thought it would be good to actually discuss. So we have one question here from someone who says, I used to be a teacher for Arabic and French for 11 years in Lebanon. I have a Bachelor in Education. From where should I start? I think that you could start where you like, really. So many people who have some experience as a language teacher, maybe not teaching English, or have experience as a teacher, teaching other subjects, but not teaching language subjects, want to get into the area of teaching English as a second or additional language. So if a good place to start is often with the graduate certificate, because that's a short qualification, as Aggie has outlined, and it enables you to get a real feel for the practicalities of the area. And the good thing about is that if you do the graduate certificate, which can be done in is often done part-time over, say, a year, but can actually be done in 6 months if someone really wants to do it in that short time, full-time. The good thing is that one can then move on to a bachelor's degree and get full credit for having done the graduate certificate units. So with the graduate certificate, another year of full-time study would convert it into a master's degree. So I think that that's what I would say there. If you're sure you want to do a master's degree, then you can certainly enroll in the master's degree. But if you're not sure, you want to get a feel, do the graduate certificate, and if you decide to proceed to a master's degree, it will count towards that as well. Do you have anything else to add there, Aggie, or anyone else?
I think Luke came to this qualification with came to this course with a teaching qualification, right, in a different discipline.
Yeah, so I used to be an art teacher, actually. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of advantages to having some background in education, but the graduate certificate definitely gives you everything you need for to language teaching, and so even those without any teaching experience, it's definitely suitable.
Whereas those with some teaching experience can benefit from looking at how language is taught.
Exactly.
Especially those students who are already in ELD positions or teaching some kind of ELD or doing some kind of ELD specialist teaching in primary schools, for example, can learn a lot as we are providing lots of very important information on how on how to teach, how to scaffold language learning for your students. I've had many good feedback from teachers who have been teaching ELD for a while and then did our courses and learned a lot. The main thing is to become a reflective learner, which means that you can reflect on what you are performing, so your strengths and weaknesses, and then identify what you need to improve and act upon it. And that's the most important thing, because then you will learn through your whole career and you will keep on improving.
And all that was embedded in the practicum. So I didn't come from a teaching background. I did some tutoring in languages, but I was never qualified as a teacher before completing the course. But yeah, the practicum was amazing because you can also do it in sort of a time frame. You get to choose if you want to do it faster or over a longer period of time. I chose to do it over a longer period just to get that more in-depth learning. And as Aggie said, reflect upon what I've learned through the course and how I applied it while teaching.
If I could just go back to that point that Bonnie was making before about the suitability of her placement, I've also had the same experience. I felt like the teaching team at Macquarie were really good at, helping you understand where you would fit best based on, the learning and the teaching that you've done together. And like Bonnie, I felt at home straight away, and I knew I wanted to work there straight away. And I think it's a really good system that's in place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And the lecturers at Macquarie Uni as well, there's that ongoing support. So if you have questions about job opportunities or further studies, you can always reach out to your lecturers. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Thanks, everyone. That's great. I think it's probably answered that question and maybe some others as well. The next question I have here is about the major difference between the graduate certificate of Tesol and the linguistics degree. So basically, we have both of our degrees, both of our qualifications, the graduate certificate of Tesol and the Master of Applied Linguistics and Tesol. They both include a Tesol component, so a teaching English to speakers of other languages component. Is there any difference in the future careers? The other part of the question. I think the graduate certificate of Tesol, I think, is what we might think of as an entry-level qualification. So it's something that gets you into the field and at the ground level, and gives you a chance to see if you like it. Gives you a chance to, as the speakers have just been talking about, do a practicum, a practical placement in an institution, and then if you in some cases, people already have other qualifications where they sort of feel, well, the graduate certificate basically complements my existing qualifications, and that's all I need for now. I think other people probably do the graduate certificate, and it's the first degree, the first qualification they have in anything related to language study or language learning. And for those people, if they like it and they want to make it a career, then probably a master's degree will open up certainly more doors to more senior positions in institutions. That's my take on it, but maybe some of our panelists or Aggie might like to add something.
Well, I haven't done the master's in Tesol yet, but I think it would definitely help from what I've read about it, just to refine your teaching skills, and again, just continue to learn as a teacher, because that's always important. So yeah.
Also, if you want to move on from maybe even in ESL, if I think about the ALICOS sector, for example, if you want to move to a higher management position, all the skills that you acquire through the master's course, like language testing, curriculum, studies, those are really important for you to implement or in your teaching or in your management as well. Not talking about, also you can also take part in projects, like curriculum projects. Luke took part in one, right?
I was going to say, I think that the applied linguistics aspect of the course is really handy for curriculum development opportunities. And actually that's something that's coming up quite a lot now, as there's a lot of government scholarships to change courses to more blended delivery, more integrated learning. So having a higher degree can really help you get into those sort of positions. There's also a lot of MOOCs. I think that's the right pronunciation. The massive open online courses are becoming really, really popular, and they take a long time to develop. I worked on one of those for 5 weeks, and I was a minute part of it because they're delivered to so many people. So there's a lot of opportunities in curriculum development. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all very much. That's great. Just a quick question about the timetable. The participant asked, may I ask about the timetable? Is it mostly after 4 p.m. night classes or on weekends? Basically, the on-campus offerings are, for the master's degree, they can be all through the day at different times of the day, but not on the weekends, basically Monday to Friday. With the graduate certificate units, some of which are shared by the master's degree, 2 of those, I believe, are generally scheduled from 4 p.m. They follow on from each other, so that some people come to attend, who want to attend on campus but are teaching during the day, come from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. I think. Is that right, Agnes?
2 p.m. to 4 and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
4 to 6. Okay, so they're
the foundation units.
So they're earlier. We I think if we've got people studying obviously in many different situations, some who want to study full time and are kind of free during the day and keen to use that time. Others who have work during the day. Some people have commitments in the evening, so that they're not free then. Mm-hmm. So I think with the timetabling, what we generally suggest to people is look at when the different components are offered, the units that you want to study in any particular session. And if you're able to come to campus and you want to, then enroll on campus. If not, you can enroll online, and it's the same content, and it's designed to be done that way. And in fact, many people do the degree partly or completely online. So just a matter of looking at what's timetabled when and then choosing. I think Bonnie wanted to add a comment there.
Oh yeah, I just did the whole course online, and it was very flexible. So everything was recorded, and like I said previously, everything was very accessible. Yeah.
We also provide, many of our units also run, the online option can be done what we call synchronously or asynchronously. Asynchronously would mean that you would be covering the same materials, maybe shorter lectures, but doing the same tasks and posting them, engaging with other students. Mm-hmm. The synchronous version is that many of our units lecturers do is that they set up a Zoom link for their classes. Peter teaches like that, Luke has done that, right? And they basically, you've got the face-to-face class and the Zoom people in the same session. It's very popular, I have to say.
Yes, I think the last 2020 kind of changed our thinking in a lot of ways, and if there's anything positive that's come out of all the negative elements of it, it's that we see more possibilities for, I guess, delivering things and continuing to adapt to delivering things to where people are and where people need to be. So thank you. Yeah. Another question we have here, is it just pure coincidence? The guest speakers are all from TAFE or ESL teaching opportunities, most likely in TAFE at the moment. Asking whether International Foundation or EALD opportunities in schools are not very promising at the moment. Certainly, as Sophie indicated, there are a lot of students at TAFE at the moment, particularly under the Adult Migrant English program. That's certainly keeping the need for teachers high there. Also, in the school sector, in the school sector, it's important to remember that people who are teaching in schools are already qualified teachers for primary school or high school. So we don't provide the basic qualification that enables one to teach any subject in a high school or primary school. There are particular educational qualifications people need for that. But our qualifications are recognized by the New South Wales Education Standards Authority as giving you what's called an EALD specialization. So English as an additional language or dialect specialization. And many schools in New South Wales have specialist EALD teachers who work with the students who are basically in mainstream classes, but need some additional support with English language because of they've come from backgrounds where there may be a different language spoken at home, for instance. So it's just additional support. And so that certainly does continue. And I don't think the need there has really changed. Certainly, anything that depends on international students being in Australia at the moment is happening at a very low level. There is some online teaching going on, but certainly not the new international arrivals that we have been seeing. I guess at some point that will pick up again. We don't know exactly where it is, when that will be, but I guess one can prepare oneself for the day that it does happen. But you're right at the moment that that's pretty that's at a low level at the moment. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Sophie? Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say that, yeah, so our AMEP has never been busier, and that is because of not never been busier, but it's very, very busy and growing. And that's because the legislation changed and word has got out into the community that students who have studied AMEP before can come back. And also I just wanted to mention why perhaps there were so many TAFE representatives in terms of the AMEP. So TAFE, at least for the Sydney region, or most of the AMEP is organised in different regions to TAFE, but TAFE won the AMEP contracts and does still have them in most of Sydney. So that's why in adult education, there is a lot of work despite the closed borders, because there's always migrants needing to learn English, and yeah, we have the majority of the contract, and it does get renewed every 3 years, so it'll go out to tender, but hopefully we'll continue to get it. But so far we've had it for 9 years. Yeah, so a lot of, yeah, that is the biggest migrant English program in Australia, and yet TAFE does have the bulk of those courses.
In saying, yeah, oh, sorry. I was just going to respond quickly. In saying that I teach at Gosford and Newcastle TAFE. At Gosford, we have the AMEP contract, but not at Newcastle. But I still have my position at Newcastle too. So it's interesting how both at state level, the state level funding and the federal funding, it's, yeah, working both ways there.
What I wanted to add was the primary school sector. So just because the borders are closed, it doesn't mean that the students are not there. So all the students, so the funding, maybe some students with an ESL background have funding for some support for 1 day. It doesn't mean that they do not need support from their classroom teachers. So if we have primary school teachers here with us today in the attendees, doing a Tesol certificate will increase your employability, because you will be able to teach in schools where there are ESL students who do not get all the support that they need from an ELD specialist. So as a classroom teacher, you can do a lot. You can learn a lot and use that. There's also career pathways as well for you as an ELD teacher. I can still see a lot of ads for ELD teachers online. So there are opportunities, but you need to be an accredited teacher, of course.
Okay, thank you, Aggie. Yeah, we've got a few more questions, so I might move through them fairly quickly if I can. This one I think I can answer myself. The participant, thank you for your question, said, I know now is probably the worst time for international education, but do you think international students will return to Australia quickly? And can we find enough opportunities for ESL teaching? I think it's very difficult to say when international students will return, because we've had lots of predictions in the last 12 months that haven't come true. So I think it's fair to say that international students will return at some point, but it might not be this year. It might be, but I wouldn't. I don't think we can be sure about it. I think, as we've talked about, there are other opportunities for teaching English language teaching for people who are already in the country. And at some point, the international students will return, and so that will open up the LA-COS industry again. But I think, in summary, there are certainly opportunities out there still with the with the people that we have in Australia. And at some point, if you are of the mind that you like to prepare for the future, at some point there will be these additional opportunities, but certainly not probably in the next few months. I'll move quickly to the next one just to make sure we go through. This participant said, very interested in teaching ESL, especially from North Asia. I came from Japan. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your experience of this? If I do this, where do we find opportunities? I feel like it's very hard. So this is teaching ESL, especially students from North Asia. I think, I guess, Luke, you have some experience there. I think you're muted, Luke, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about what actually requires me to talk about. I guess we're talking about students that have come to Australia from North Asia, yeah? I'm
not sure if maybe the person who's asked the question maybe say whether you're interested in teaching in Japan or in North Asia, or teaching students from that region in Australia. Yeah. Maybe you can pop another question up there. I might move on in the meantime. I'll just leave that question there, and we'll keep going. Another participant asks, apart from the degree, do you offer specialized units focusing on teaching English to certain language users, for example, Japanese? And then they've written arigato in Japanese at the bottom. So I'm glad you chose Japanese to write at the bottom, because it's one of the few languages other than English that I speak a little bit of. In this case, we don't offer courses that specialize in teaching units to teaching English to certain users. However, I think the whole philosophy of our teaching is that we keep learners' needs in mind, and we keep the context in mind. So we're always thinking about, or asking our students to think about the context in which they work, the constraints that operate there, and the requirements, and what students need, and the kind of that can relate to the levels of English that students come in with at different times, why they're learning, and all of those kinds of things. So I think we don't sort of divide it up according to students from particular language or cultural backgrounds, but we do certainly promote, I guess, an approach where people think about that and use that as the starting point for designing curricula, thinking about materials and methods and things like that. Yeah. I'm just going to keep going to make sure we get through before we finish here. In terms, just coming back to the question before about students from North Asia and Japan, I think the participant who asked that question has come back and said that they're interested in both. If they can't find opportunities here, they might move back to Japan to continue teaching. So.
Oh, okay. So I would say that the course would prepare you for either. And I think that kind of comes back to my something I was talking about earlier, which is the kind of the adaptability and the flexibility that applied linguistics and taking that approach to, or having that background knowledge, it allows you to sort of really adapt yourself to a range of situations. So I guess I would be saying that having a really strong background in linguistics gives you the opportunity for both. It widens your opportunities, yeah.
Good. Thank you very much, Luke. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. One question I think that our panelists might be able to answer here is in terms of job vacancies, do you feel that there's more chances of getting an ESL job in regional areas than in Sydney, like in the Central Coast, Newcastle, or Port Macquarie? I live in the lower North Shore and found it very hard to find jobs. So I don't know, some of our panelists can talk to that. Bonnie, I think you are working in Newcastle and Central Coast.
Yeah, so I work in Newcastle and Gosford. I also do relief teaching for other TAFEs in the area. So there's a couple of TAFEs in Newcastle. So there's the Tyes Hill one in Glendale. There's Wyong as well. So I think there's, yeah, maybe I can't really fully straight answer because I don't know what the job opportunities are like between Sydney, but maybe Sophie can answer. I do know I've got a classmate who did find a job in Sydney at a couple of different TAFEs. So yeah, sorry.
No,
Sophie might have a better answer.
Would you like to comment there, Sophie?
Oh, well, if you're from the lower North Shore, yes, come and visit us at Hornsby. But no, so different migrants, as you know, have in the past been shunted, if that's the word, to certain areas. So there are a lot of, oh no, I can't remember, in Port Macquarie. There's a big refugee community in Port Macquarie. And then, yes, a lot of our students actually come here if they can't find the course they need. They do even come from the Central Coast. What was I going to say? So I think the government is stopping this, or trying not to sort of send huge groups of migrants to regional areas. I think Sydney still would have more employment opportunities. The thing with TAFE, so as I said, as I will say, some of our best teachers are from the Macquarie Uni Grad Cert program. So whether or not they've had experience or not before, what usually happens if they come, if they're able to get a prac with us and we like them and they like TAFE, we literally have an informal interview with the student and the head teachers. We take their documents, we put them on nomination, and pretty much as soon as we can give you work, what we do. So it is a good way in doing where you do your prac, which other people have mentioned. But at TAFE, after you've been on nomination for a while, every now and then a formal recruitment comes up for part-time casual teachers. And so we tell all our new teachers on nomination to apply for that. And that then, because of one TAFE, means you can work at any TAFE. You don't have to go through the whole recruitment process. You can work at any TAFE in New South Wales. So you could start at one and move around. But yeah, some of our best teachers have come from knocking on the door, meeting us, and we've then been able to offer them work. I'd say just keep trying to that person, keep approaching, or try a different campus. But I think there's probably more work in Sydney than regional areas.
Great. Thank you very much, Sophie. And thanks, Bonnie, earlier for your answer. I think we're at the end of our questions now, and we're just perfectly at the end of our time as well. So I'd like to thank my colleague Aggie, as well as our three panelists, Sophie, Luke, and Bonnie. And I'd like to thank Diana and Vivi also for organizing this, and Andrew behind the scenes for making sure all the technology works well. I think it's been a wonderful session, and I've really enjoyed it. And I really hope that most of all, I guess I'd like to thank the people who've come along and attended tonight and stayed with us through the whole hour. I hope it's been useful, and you can easily contact us if you'd like to ask more questions. And I hope that we'll meet some of you in our courses in the near future. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.